Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Now, I'm going to apologize in advance. I've been flubbing up my words. I can't get my intro right for this video, and I have no idea why. So I'm just going to apologize in advance for that one. At the point you guys are seeing this, we are about a day away from patch 4.4. We're going to be live streaming through AlphaScape and AlphaScape Savage. The first day is going to be a 20-hour stream. At least that's what the current plan is. And then the day after will probably be something similar, at least until we clear it, in which case we'll probably be going into Suzaku as soon as we're done. Now, we don't know what to really expect from this raid tier. You know, there's some different translations coming out about the difficulty overall. Some translations say that the difficulty overall will have gone up from the previous raid tier. Some strictly say that 010 Savage in particular should be more difficult than 06 Savage, which isn't too much of a surprise. Even 02 Savage was more difficult than 06 Savage. So curious to see if it'll be done in a day. I still have my money on that, but you know, at the most 2 days. I don't suspect that they're gonna deliberately gear restrict this one, especially considering we've seen the minimum item levels and they are following the same trends of that was used in the previous raid tiers, and the previous 2 raid tiers actually. So look forward to that, and of course look forward to first kills popping up for the majority of the week. Very unoptimal strategies for that, and then we'll take a look at those, see what we can optimize there, and then release some guides as the week progresses. But expect it to be a very busy week over here on the YouTube channel. Speaking of busy week, I gotta do some thank yous. We gotta thank the people over on Patreon for supporting the channel through #demonetized. Now, with all of the names we have here, of course, we have to start with our patron of light, Khuja Cross on Jenova, who's been a very, very large supporter of the channel for several months now. We always have an image on the screen, which I always run out of things to say about because they always just look like good pictures. So thank you for the screenshot. Thank you for the support, Khuja. And you're awesome. So thank you. And then, of course, we have our huge list of sponsors. In case you guys didn't know, I do include a link to the first question under the video now because this list can get pretty long. So, but you know, you should stick around, and you should say thank you to these people as well because they're cool. I thank you for watching it, even if you're not a sponsor, so you can thank them too. So let's start with our standard sponsors. We have Nye-rick and Kaya Mitsuki of Midgardsormr, Rendil Gaming, Sabo Empire, Mizra, Red Wings of the Baron FC from Zalera, Fray Blackheart, Cidus, Oreo and Shiva, Syd Hellwind of Gilgamesh, Afro Ninja from Malboro, Cheesecake from Leviathan, Sploda, That Lane Weeb, Ashen Emiya of Cerberus, Argoti Tristam of Midgardsormr, Fafarian, Rendil, Giraffeswillrule, Stevie-Rex, and Neon. We have our elite sponsors. We have Senshi, we have Crimson and Talvia Swift of Coerl, Just One Fox, Shadowlink on Tonberry, Dom, Asuka Wake from Jenova, Lemilionella of Midgardsormr, Sarah and the Avalanche Family on Malboro, Janua Yatu, Kifka and the Great Eagles on Exodus, Dark Graver, Katayoshi from Khuja, Skia Symphonia from Ragnarok, Rah Xephon from Exodus, Rynoet Westos the Purple Warrior, Magic Red Steel on Exodus, Lexxie Valentine, Mantaru the Rivivus FC from Zodiark, Sour Cream and Chives from Jenova, Rynoet Chikara, Guisha Valfer of Siren Hirschverse of Barry, Phoenix Down FC on Goblin, and Saren from Zodiark. Finally, we have our premium sponsorship. We have Shinka, we have Casual Heroes FC on Midgardsormr, we have Tatacha Taka on Hyperion, Kano Izuki of Jenova, U-Starla on Coerl, Sathal, Sarah Frost from Behemoth, Diablo, Holy Tabasco, Red Thorn Asura, Asken Hawk from Shiva, Crass015, Mustang, Serenity FC on Ultros, Cat Kazuma, Serial Kira on Cactar, Ignis Fairgun from Diablos, Balestra of Fanfret, Knock Quarters from Excalibur, Krovos Moonscar, Private Mikey, Spike, Notting Kirasami, Rudy Rudiger, Tin Colossus, Killer Hackman, Roll Jr., and Kiltastic Jones. Thank you everyone for your continued support over on Le Patreon. With that, we do have quite a few questions. I'm not live on Twitch this week, so we are going to be having just the questions from the forums, and then we'll be done. So let's get to it. All right, let's get started with our first question. Hello, mister. Hello. Final Fantasy 14 doesn't excite me as much as it does anymore, so I would like to ask a non-14 related question. Like last week, I cooked, by the way, but I really wanted that pizza. Me too. I was wondering, when you play video games, do you like using any cheats? Do you like hacking games in your favor? Super Mario Bros. If someone uses the warp pipes, is that cheating or just taking a shorter alternate path? I'll answer that first. That's a shorter alternate path. I mean, I remember as a kid always being excited when I found a secret warp pipe that would like take me through several worlds. And I always liked using it just to get to the worlds that I may not have had time to get to in one sitting. Especially when it was like, okay, I only have 10 more minutes to play and I don't want to leave I didn't leave my consoles on when I was young. So I would like, you know, maybe I made it to world 3 this time. I would actually turn it off, turn it back on, go through the first couple levels, it only takes a couple minutes, then warp to like the 4th world, for example, check out what the 4th world was like, and then come back. I didn't get to do that too often, but it was something I liked. And then even after I played through the whole thing and I was playing it again, I would still occasionally just use the warp pipes because I knew they were there and it was hard not to use. As for cheating, nah, only time I ever like cheating is when it's like fun multiplayer games. You're just turning on bullshit. Like, remember Blitz? The football game, was it Blitz? Yeah, I think it was Blitz football, where you could like turn on stuff like sticky fingers, or every time you get tackled you fumble the ball, or you could turn on like a Donkey Kong mode for GoldenEye. Those things I like using, but straight up cheats, I mean, only if it's a game that I just really want to see the ending. Like, I know one that I cheated on, and I actually did this by accident. I accidentally activated the level skip code in the Lion King. Which was a super hard game, and and then once I found that screen, I just went to the last boss because I didn't use internet much back then, so I found it by accident. I just clicked everything at once at one point and it went. And then I also think I found that in what was the name of that game? I think it was the one on the Sega. It was like the 3D Sonic game. Might have been Sonic 3D. That might have been what it was called. And I remember doing the same thing. Like on the first level, I accidentally activated the level skip code. And I ended up skipping all the way to the end just to see the last boss when I actually had that. But no, other than that, not really, unless it's a game I just really want to get some revenge. I know I used the Game Shark for Quest 64. I remember that, and I have beaten the game fairly since then, but I remember doing that because that game infuriated me. Ugh. And I don't like hacking games. I mean, unless you consider like a Game Shark hacking, and like I said, I already said I used that on Quest 64. No, not really. I like hacking games to make them more challenging, if anything. Perfect example would be Final Fantasy VI. Brave New World. It's a ROM hack where I was able to up the difficulty of everything, and it was a really interesting ROM hack. I don't really know where it stands right now because I know Nintendo did a bunch of shutdowns on a lot of those ROM distribution websites, so I don't really know if that's much of a thing anymore. But I still have one of the old patches on there, and I own Final Fantasy VI, which is the main reason why I even have a ROM in the first place for it. But I don't know if Brave New World was hit, that actual like patch was hit by any of those takedowns. So it'd be unfortunate if it was, because it was a lot of fun playing Brave New World. Yeah, if anything, I like hacking games to make them more difficult, not in my favor. All right, question number 2. Hey, Mr. Haps. Hi. It's been a while since I've asked a question here, so, see? Flubs. So here's a return bonus of a lifetime immunity to Con Crud, since you go to a lot of conventions. Yeah, but I don't get sick at them too often. I'm pretty good. I always have hand sanitizer. I hand sanitize, like, every time I shake someone's hand. Never touch your face. That's another big one, unless you've just sanitized, in which case also don't touch your face, because that's going to go poorly for you. But at least if you haven't made contact with anybody, then it's fine. But I'd still avoid it, honestly. Shower, if you want, shower twice a day. I would personally recommend showering twice a day. Shower once before you go out on the show floor, once when you get off the show floor. Especially if you're going out in the evenings, there's a lot of parties and stuff to go to. So it's just to avoid anyone who isn't doing these things. You don't know who is and who isn't. You always take maximum precautions with your hygiene in that case. So I've never really gotten sick. So the first question involves recent leaks. Gonna avoid those altogether. I actually messaged somebody else and I was just like, you know what? And it's been coming up a lot in Twitch chat, of course. I'm just like, you know what? I'm either going to sound dumb talking about it again, or I'm going to come off as unprofessional. So I did actually cut another question about that before we actually started for the day, because I had noticed it when I was doing it. And so the second question is the one that I'll definitely be taking with this one. I appreciate you letting me know in advance that you have those two things set up. So the second question is, in case you don't want to discuss that, in the future of the game, the world expansion, do you think we're definitely heading into Garlemald with 5.0? So are there any ideas we might go next that will open up the rest of the content based on the current map? Will they expand the new world with new continents like they did in 11? Are there any chances that Ishgard and Ala Mhigo eventually become city-states with new beginning zones? So the back half of your thing, we can never say they won't do that. We have no idea what I guess their sort of catch-up mechanics are for newer players, or what systems are going to be putting in place when the level cap keeps getting raised over and over again. But we have tons of areas in the world that we haven't seen, whether it be islands like Thavnair, or an entire continent like the New World and Meracidia. Those are two continents we've never been to. We've also never been to the Charlayan Islands. So there's a lot of areas that they could expand to, and a lot of them are just kind of, and then there's also tons of areas on the maps we've never actually been to, or that are blocked off because of whatever reasons, like geographically. So there is a lot of room to expand. I'm 100% confident we'll go into Garlemald. They're just building into it way too much for it to not happen. And the war between the Populares and the Optimates is going to be probably a thing at the forefront, but it's going to be a front probably for Ascian machinations. And I have a feeling we're going to be diving a lot more into the Ascians' next stage of their plans, and hopefully eliminating a few more of them in the next expansion. After that, though, it's a tough call. I mean, everyone keeps saying they'll eventually do a time travel one where we go back to the Allegan Empire. I hope not, because there's nothing really for us to do there outside of stop someone else from time traveling, so I just hope it doesn't happen. There's always talk of the moon, which is, you know, supposed to be not necessarily Zodiark's home, but compared, you have the star and you have the moon, and the moon is, you know, Zodiark is synonymous with it, likely his prison overall, just like with Dalamud. Although not exactly like Dalamud, more of a like an actual celestial body that houses Zodiark's power than a physical prison for him. As for the other option, I don't know. I don't think we'll see New World. I think New World's going to kind of remain a super secret thing that we won't really dive into very much. I feel like that's kind of, when we finish actually the Ascian storyline, which probably won't end in 5.0, probably wouldn't end until 6.0 at the earliest altogether. But that's when I think they would save something like a New World, or even Mrhappy. Mrhappy, I mean, we know there's 2 dragons left that we haven't seen or that we haven't interacted with. We have Vertra and Azdaja. Those are 2 of Midgardsormr's remaining children we haven't messed with. And if one of them's in Mrhappy, I wouldn't be surprised. We know that it's mostly a desolate land, but we know that there's life there. So there's a lot of things that could happen. And I'm curious to see what they will go into after Garlemald. But I am stoked for Garlemald. Question number 3. Hey there, Happy. Hello. First off, love your guide videos and commentary that helped me this past year getting through certain trials in Realm Reborn, Heavensward, and Stormblood. Thus, first time caller. Hey, thank you for asking your question for the first time. I saw that first time post and I was like, hey, first time bonus. It's okay. I don't need one. As someone who only recently beat Stormblood 3 weeks ago, I found the grind to continue and finish at 4.3 to be a bit frustrating, like I was getting stonewalled, punished for being behind. From a Realm Reborn to Heavensward and the majority of the main story, I felt like there was never really an area I had to grind a bunch to continue. Typically, it would be like, oh, just finish up half a level or get an additional eye level or 2. And then 335 just to be able to complete Castrum Fluminous in 4.3 is fairly lengthy. I think the cap previously was 325 and before that 315, and not too far off. I feel like this wouldn't have been the case for anyone with full well up to date prior to the release of Eureka, since Eureka was out for a couple months. Do you think they should remove weekly cap from Mendacity Tomes? Players could actually run Roulette's dungeons instead of having to use Heaven on High Eureka as their source for continuing main storylines. I thoroughly enjoyed the story and have loved that I've never had to steer off too long and continue it, and I want to know your thoughts on how they may remedy this. So I think you're trying to compare too much your experience of old content they want people to get through very quickly and with as little speed bumps as possible to stuff that's current content that's supposed to be keeping you subscribed to the game. It shouldn't reasonably take too long for you to move through the item level that you have at the end of the story, which is usually, you know, between 280 to 90, immediately move into a more relevant item level. Tomestones, for example, you're talking about Mendacity, which is to get 370 stuff, or 360 stuff that can be built in the 370 stuff. Whereas the tomestones that we had prior would still get you to 330, 340, which is pretty close to where you want to be. On top of that, dungeon rewards, the item level of the dungeon rewards in this expansion have been very satisfactory. Depending on the server, the cost of crafted gear can be a little bit daunting, so I guess I don't really want to dive too much into that. But there's plenty of sources of gear, and when you're diving into the current expansion, into the content that they want you to be playing for a longer period of time, I don't see any need to remedy this, is the big thing. It's already a relatively quick process compared to a lot of other games, and you still have plenty of other things to do in regards to leveling other jobs or trying other jobs in the first place, and the wealth of dungeons and whatnot you need to unlock, usually providing a good amount of tomestones to get your foot in the door in order to actually access the newer content. So I don't think there's anything that they need to do really at all in regards to what you're talking about. Mendacity will have its cap removed when they introduce Tomestones of Genesis, and catching up again will, you know, reach that next step that you have, the next hurdle that you can overcome a little bit more quickly. And yeah, I don't know, there's not really much to adjust on this end. Question number 4. What up, Mr. Happy? What up? A group of friends and I have been playing WoW while we wait for 4.4. WoW released their first raid of the expansion. As we were running it, I made a comment how I wish 14 had trash mobs, reminded that back in Coil there were trash mobs. There were trash mobs in normal mode, Alexander, as well. It's not in Savage, where it was just bosses. To me, it feels that overexpansion raids have started to feel disconnected from all the world building I like about the game. Coil had trash mobs, Alexander had trash mobs in normal, and now Omega only has trash mobs in the solo instant story sections. At this point, it feels more like a boss rush than us actually exploring an incredibly dangerous zone with powerful enemies. The dev team ever mentioned a reason why they were backing away from this? Mind the minority and the community actually prefers raids the way they are. Now, semi-related, do you think we'll ever see Savage raids laid out like 24-mans with the environment being one large instance instead of 4 small? So there's a lot of, I guess, questions for me to tackle that are individual. So I'll talk about first trash mobs. Generally, trash mobs in our game just aren't worth anything. There's no recipes, there's no gear that drops from it, there's nothing you're going to sell. So they are just there for either A, world building, or B, padding of the actual instance. So that's the main reason why I guess we've moved further and further away from them, especially in Savage, where they're not trying to have Savage trash. They want you to be taking on a Savage boss. Motorcycle. Goodbye. Goodbye, motorcycle. Welcome to LA. So that's kind of the main reason. I do agree with you that Omega kind of takes it to a little too far when it comes to sort of that disconnect, but it's because of the way Omega's laid out overall, where it is a tournament, so there is no trash. You're literally supposed to be going up against bosses as part of the story. Of course, they designed it that way, so you could say it's a bit of a cop-out since they designed it that way from scratch. As for, has the dev team ever mentioned why? I don't think they've ever mentioned why they've moved away from trash mobs, but it's trash mobs are a regularly contestable thing when it comes to who you ask. Most of the time, people just want to beat the bosses. The best loot comes from the bosses. All the stuff comes from the bosses. But when you play WoW, not always the case. Trash mobs generally have, sometimes some pretty exciting moments, whether it be something that's worth a ton of money or a new recipe for somebody to take up. They just add, they go out of their way to develop their trash to have value and to actually have mechanics in some case. Whereas our game, we focus entirely on that boss experience, and the trash is just kind of there in between. So they've never commented on it, but that's what I would deduce from their design philosophies. Am I in the minority that actually prefers raids the way they are now? The community, I don't know, the community seems pretty split. I think the topic of having trash is pretty split. I think people want their raids to feel more connected. I think I'd say that's the wider opinion, but there are plenty of people who definitely appreciate boss, and not wasting any time in between any of those bosses. I actually am in the same boat as you, where I would prefer them to be like 24-man raids, but with the way our instance structure is developed, a 24-man instance disappears no matter what after the 2-hour time limit goes. So it's not actually saving your boss progress all the way through. In fact, it doesn't save boss progress at all, because you're locked out on that one piece of loot. So the way a 24-man instance is put together isn't put together in the same way that the 8-mans are. They've also said that the reason why the raids are designed the way they are in terms of breaking them into multiple instances is for server load. So that way, if, there's a lot of people in one server, there's a lot of people in another, they can split them up, and you don't have tons of people occupying a large instance that's then split between all the groups that are actually in there. So they can break it down individually by boss. It also means that you can just choose to queue in for the boss you actually need, and not maybe queue in, get to the second boss with a pug, and then leave because that was where your loot was. You could just queue into the second boss if that's what you wanted, and then go until you get the loot that you want. Obviously, with the way Savage raids work, you only get one chance a week no matter what as soon as you get the kill. But the idea is still there. If that's the boss you want to focus on, at least you're not screwing the other 7 people, and they need to find another person to do the remaining bosses afterwards. So I'd say there's pros and cons of both. I personally am a bigger fan in terms of world building to have the one instance is where the whole raid is located, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. I don't see it happening in the next expansion, and at this point I just want more bosses, because I don't see us getting trash with interesting drops or a single instance for our raids ever. Just personal opinion. Question number 5. Hey there, Happy. I got a couple of questions. I got a couple of answers. I've been watching you play Dragon Quest XI lately, wonderful RPG, and I decided to buy it and try it out. I was wondering if you could give me any tips on what builds would be good to go for the main character. Great swords, one-handed swords. I'd say that I kind of just always took the weapons that were strongest at the time when I got them. If I got a one-handed sword that was pretty close to the two-handed sword strength, which would mean that I held on to my two-handed sword probably a little too long, I'd swap over to the one-handed sword. For the MC though, the advantage of the one-handed sword is before you obtain a certain skill at some point in the game, you get access to some all damage, some all enemy AoE. The MC gets that eventually, regardless of what build you go for. But if you want to stuff points into the one-handed sword, then you'll probably get access to it at a more desirable rate, I would say. I did go with greatswords for the majority of the early game, though, because I got a really strong one from the casinos, and that worked just fine as well. The amount of damage output there was fantastic, so it doesn't really matter. Like, I barely used swords and shields the whole game. I used double axes a lot of the time. I didn't use spears on some of the characters, even though spears are really, really good in the game. You could find some characters I would have dual wands. One person I'd have the two-handed staff. It's just really whatever was strongest at the time, or if how much time I really wanted to invest in the idea of changing it around. So whichever one you like the most is kind of just the real answer. You don't need to go anything too OP or too specific. But that is the reason why I like the one-handed swords a little bit more. Even though by the time I beat the whole game, I was using a two-handed sword for the final boss. I think it's better to buy armor and weapons or to forge them. So at some point, you'll be getting the option to purchase pearls as opposed to only getting them from forging. Once that happens, then a lot of the time purchasing the gear and then reforging it is a good option. But also around that time, armor is expensive. Armor and weapons can get really, really expensive. So if you're finding lots of recipes, it's a pretty good idea to craft them from scratch. But if you pick something up, then even just doing a few throwaway crafts to get enough pearls early game to then reforge the armor and weapons that you've picked up is a really, really solid option. Just remember that if you get something that's really strong way earlier than you're supposed to, that your forge and how good it is dependent on the level of your main character. So a level 10 main character has a weaker forge than a level 30 character, and so on and so forth until you hit 99 when the forge is at its maximum strength. So keep that in mind when you're reforging, because you can end up wasting a lot of pearls early game thinking, oh, okay, I'll just reforge this, and it ends up being like a 3-star item when you're around the 1 and 1.5 star areas of the game. Getting the materials, by the way, don't forget that in Dragon Quest XI, if you go to the miscellaneous tab, go to info, you can literally click on the materials button and it will tell you every material and where it's found. Can it be purchased? Can it not be purchased? If so, what are the areas it can be found in? What enemies drop it? On top of that, on your map, don't forget that you can track shinies if you've picked any up, and if you haven't picked any up, it'll tell you where the ones you haven't picked up are. It's a game that has all the knowledge you need for the game itself is in the game, so it's a fantastic way to do JRPGs in regards to materials and whatnot. So it's a matter of assessing the situation and determining what you can do at the current time and how much of an advantage you'll get out of doing it. Question number 6. Hello, Happy Kun. Hello. I don't know why I'm doing that. It's like from Seinfeld. Hello. Except not as good. Hope you have a good day and wish you an awesome week with 4.4. Fingers crossed, my friend. I mean, we're not world first. We're not competing on that level. But we just want to beat it fast. So hoping for a good week of rating. The question below may sound like a rant, so apologies in advance. That is okay. It seems lately there's more of a complaint of 14's content becoming stale, with Stormblood being more of a carbon copy of Heavensward. However, Stormblood does have a new content in the form of Ultimates. Okay, maybe Eureka's not Diadem 2.0, but I know you have a problem with Eureka, and it's not with Eureka itself, but rather the lack of options. Yeah. Ultimates, however, are targeted mainly at a niche group of players who generally burn new content quickly. Those who beat Savage in the first few days, and seemingly the fun of Ultimates comes mainly from progging it blindly rather than farming it, making the actual content last for several days rather than weeks or months. Thus, the feeling of lack of new content is also felt for some players, despite Ultimates being primarily targeted for them. I feel like this is one of the reasons behind Square Enix cutting back the number of Ultimates. The resources spent do not reach the majority of the player base, or sufficiently retain the primary targets SE's business. While it's true Ultimates generate hype elsewhere, such as on Twitch, the audience does not have to be subbing to the game in order to, and the ability of Ultimates abilities. They do not have to be subbing on the game to watch the streams, and the ability of Ultimates to attract new players probably still be investigated. What is your option on this observation? How should Square Enix approach creating raid content and new content in 5.0? Specifically for Ultimates, do you think Square Enix will or should expand on their resources creating this new type of content? Okay, a lot of information there, a little ranty like you warned me, but you did warn me, so kudos to that one. So I do agree with you. Ultimates appeal to a very small percentage of the raids. We did actually just get some approximate numbers on Uwu clears coming from one of the Lucky Boncho, what are they called? Census or Sensei, I suppose, if you will. And it was a pretty impressive number. There's a lot more clears than UCOB, mostly because the fight's a little bit shorter. And the last phase, you can even if you have deaths and screw up, you can make relatively solid prog, since there's very few mechanics that instantly wipe the whole raid, so you can continue to kind of see past where your group can actually reach. As for Ultimate itself, the observation I have is just that Ultimate's really good for publicity for the game, not necessarily for subscriptions. There's definitely some people who see that, and they see kind of the pinnacle of the combat system, and they go, oh, snap. I want to try playing this game. And you know what? Any content can work for that reason. If people are going out of their way to view the game, then that's just a natural byproduct regardless. This just happens to get some of the most intense viewership on any of the platforms that it's being streamed on. As for approaching new content, one of the big things about Stormblood is it took a lot of the things Heavensward did right and then tried to do them better. And then it also had its own few slip-ups. You know, Heavensward had its slip-ups, and Stormblood, I'd say PvP is... I personally feel that for casual PvP players, as much as they tried to kind of more target it towards them, that they may have slipped up a little bit towards the end of Heavensward and then into Stormblood. That's my own personal opinion, that they kind of slipped up, as I used to have a pretty decent interest in it, and it's waned with a lot of the changes that they've made over the recent years. But the big thing with Stormblood definitely feels more about taking concepts that worked in Heavensward and trying to do them again. And also taking concepts that didn't work, like Diadem, and try to make them work for the Relic, like Eureka. So what should they do for new content? I mean, it really just comes down to, you kind of just need more content developers, and that's not a simple thing. You know, people want more raid bosses, or they want, as we were discussing earlier, they want the raids to be designed in a more cohesive way. And, you know, I think that's partially a resource thing, the way they decide to do them now. And I would love for them to expand on that, either with more bosses and raids, going back to more dungeons like we used to have, which is something that more of the player base can do. Stuff like maps and getting information out, getting people to actually do that type of content. I feel like it's just because they cut a lot of things like leave quests, which more casual players used to do. The Relic can't be done as casually, or not as fun doing it as casually. So it's kind of like that aspect has been removed if you don't want to do Eureka itself, because like me, a lot of people don't like Eureka. So I think they need to kind of take a look at some of the concepts that they changed in Stormblood from Heavensward and see what kind of worked better. I feel like the Relic was, as much as it got a lot of flack early on in Heavensward, eventually still kind of fit into that, you know, play as you will, make a little progress, and if you really want to grind it out, go for it. It won't feel as bad because you're doing content that you're actively choosing to do anyway, like duty roulettes to maybe level alternate jobs, or if you're not allowed to do that for whatever step, then at least you're doing something that also generates tomestones, which can generate gil income or allow you to purchase gear for your other jobs. So there's so much overlap in the way you're able to go about progressing your character, whereas with Eureka, it's very linear. On top of that, raid difficulty, I think they've nailed it for the average player base. So that, I think at this point, it's worth investigating the idea of more raid bosses, because normal and savage clears have gone up a lot this expansion. Not that normal had particularly low ones, but people weren't a huge fan of some of the earlier raids in Alexander overall. So I think you can maybe warrant another boss there if you have the resources, if you have the manpower to actually do it. And then it's just a matter of, you just can't gamble on stuff like Eureka as much. You need new ideas, but like with the first Diadem, when it didn't work, they eventually tried to rework it, but they had a whole other plan. They just abandoned it. We were kind of grateful that they didn't force expeditions on us after that, whereas with Eureka, they have continued to force it onto us. I think the big thing is they want to keep doing what works, and it's clearly working. Again, referring to that Lucky Boncho numbers, which doesn't even include people who have boosted characters that are only at level 60, or I don't remember the exact way to word it, but basically if a character is strictly boosted on an account, it's not being counted as active. It's just level 60 and they've boosted it and it's not actually played. But like the estimate from the Lucky Boncho numbers is about 627,000 active, which is a little higher than I guess I was anticipating to come out of the Lucky Boncho numbers. So whatever they're doing is clearly working enough, but you always got to worry about that staleness. You always gotta, because WoW reinvents the wheel every time, and it's been met with criticisms as well, but they kind of already have like such a naturally high player base that even with the criticisms, they just come back, do something different and exciting the next time, and whether it flubs or not doesn't really matter. They do need to take calculated risks. I think Eureka is a risk needed to happen, and I think they need to continue to do that, but they need to be able to pull information from those things, feedback from those things, and then use it to make something better. and no diadem into Eureka was not better. I don't care what anyone says. It was in no way better. It was just more mandatory because there was a relic weapon attached to it. So yeah, I mean that's it. It's not even about expanding resources. You just got to get people who can actually do the job because it's a lot harder than it sounds. All right, question number 7, AHAPS and 4.4 hype. All right, so we got a little question roulette here. Imagining a reason to go to Mrhappy, which kind of ties into something earlier. One big gripe I have with Spider-Man on the PS4, which is kind of spoilery. All right, I'm going to skip that one because I only played about 6 hours of Spider-Man, so I don't want to know anything. Just going to go with, can you go into treasure maps as an alliance? No. That's it. I think I'm just going to take the second one because that was a little too easy. And this one's kind of what do you think? Which again, I'm not a huge fan of what do you think or predict something because unless there's clues to substantiate it, there's not much. Besides Asians, why would you go to Mrhappy? I mean, it was the land of the dragons. It was an Allegan conquered land that's been separated from what we've experienced. We don't know what's down there. It's a matter of mystery. We don't know what's there. So coming up with a reason is tough because not knowing what's there could mean it's of Asian interest. Not knowing what's there can mean that something's been building there this whole time that we didn't know about. Almost like if you want to, since we've been talking about World of Warcraft, it's almost like when Northrend was first unveiled. We didn't know so much about what was building up there. We knew that's where the Lich King was, but we didn't know that he was amassing forces and planning on attacking the cities and going on a crusade like that. Deathwing, we didn't know that he was being fed power and having his body kind of reshaped with the power he was given by the old gods. So we didn't know those threats were looming. There were only small clues, and that's kind of been the big thing World of Warcraft did, and it's kind of been something that 14 does with certain details around the world as well. It's that when we start getting clues about those things is when we can really start to have fun with guessing what's actually happening there. And as for Mrhappy, other than a few historic details about it, we don't know anything that's going on there currently, and there's not very many hints to say that there is anything going on there currently. So we'll have to wait and see, pretty much is the answer. Question number 8. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hello. What restaurants would you recommend in Vegas? Any and of all types of cuisines are welcome. You are not going to be happy with my answers here. Heading there during FanFest with FC mates, and while Yelp is helpful, it's nice to get another opinion. So when I go to conventions, I don't generally go to very many places to eat. I generally get breakfast in the hotel that I'm staying at, whether it's room service or just going downstairs into whatever breakfast place is available, name or not, even if it's just the lounge of the hotel. Or like my girlfriend maybe picks a restaurant. Like I know last time Sly wanted us to go to Gyukaku, which is a Japanese barbecue, and then also there was Gordon Ramsay's steak, which was in the Paris, which is where it was held last time we went there. But there are tons of places along that little strip I never touched, and I ordered room service in half the time because I'd be done with my day and I just want to go upstairs, collect my thoughts, maybe record a video and eat in the sanctity of my room. So I don't have any great, I don't have any great recommendations. I can't even remember the name of the breakfast place that we went to, which was really good. We actually did walk, over to a breakfast place, and I just can't remember the name of it for the life of me. So I unfortunately don't have very many great recommendations because I'm working pretty much the whole day, and I don't go to very many places while I'm traveling, FanFest or not. All right, question number 9. Hey, Hapster, long time no speak. Hope your family's okay from the hurricane. Well, I'm fine. Mel and I are fine, and my mother and family back home, they're all fine too. Because of the way that it kind of went inland and became a tropical storm, it didn't have much impact on us. Or on my family, I should say. It had no impact on me. I'm in California. Here's my question. Since 4.0, I've noticed Bard has gotten any buffs or nerfs, unlike a lot of other jobs. So I'm just curious, why is that they're not getting any short of changes while others are? Quite frankly, I think Bard is the single most successful thing to come out of Stormblood from a design standpoint. It's just, I don't know. Almost everyone has unanimously thought that this iteration of Bard was the most interesting way that they've done Bard as a DPS thus far. Like, it's the first time where you do feel like a Bard, with what your thematic job is, with the songs, with the buffs. You have the healing, the healing received buff that you can give to somebody. You still have all your songs, which provide the crit rate, and they provide their own unique effects. You have to rotate through the songs, so they're an active part of your job. You still have Foe's Requiem. You still have Pain, which is used for the Dispel. Like, you have all these supportive tools in the form of your songs. And you have Battle Voice, and it's just like, it feels very Bard-like, but you are DPS with a bow and arrow. And just numerically speaking, it's been the one that they've needed to adjust. They just haven't needed to adjust as much. Is it anywhere near the top of the numbers? No, but it doesn't need to be with all that it actually offers the team. So from a gameplay perspective, from a design standpoint, it's almost like the perfect storm, the single most successful rework, I feel, that came out of Stormblood's job changes. I will say this, though. It makes me so nervous for the next expansion. They've already reworked Bard twice, like complete overhauls between expansions. I don't want them to do it with this iteration, but no matter what, they're going to make changes going into the next expansion. And I'm afraid that it's going to throw this balance of what we currently have just completely out of whack. And I hope it doesn't, because I love this iteration of Bard. Alright, it's a pretty straightforward follow-up question, which isn't from the same person, but is kind of in the same vein in terms of the topic. Hey Haps, what 2 jobs would you add alongside Bard or Machinist? Assumedly meaning you mean about physical range DPS, and how would you balance them? So first of all, that is a loaded question, because you would need to give me weeks to answer this question, because it is not something that you just do. It's something that goes through stages, it goes through development planning. This is not something that you just say, oh, this is how I would balance them. Because that's anyone who thinks you can just do that just to balance stuff, anytime people say that, I'm always like, you have no idea. Because it seems like it makes a lot of sense, and it probably does to a degree, and then just a million other things throw a complete wrench into the way it's done. I mean, it doesn't really... Personally, I don't care what they add as new jobs. My only wish list is my Puppet Master, because it's the one job from 11 that I actually liked. And even then, I don't know. I just don't care about individually what jobs they add. Also, you said, what 2 jobs would you add alongside Bard and Machinist? Are you asking me to add 2 more ranged physical? Or are you saying that in a raid scenario, if you had both a Bard and a Machinist, in which case one of those 2 jobs better be Dragoon, the other one up to you, but at least one of those fuckers better be Dragoon if you had both a Bard and Machinist. I think this question's relatively incomplete, because you're asking to add 2... I don't know exactly what you're asking. If you're asking me to add 2 more ranged physical DPS, I tell you I don't care enough about individual job additions to even think about this prior to the question. And how you balance them, again, just not an answerable question, especially when I don't even have an idea, because I don't particularly care what jobs that they actually go about adding. So I can't really answer the question. It feels incomplete. It feels like there's a lack of detail to actually tell me what I'm answering in particular. Question number 11. Hey, Happy, you doing alright? I'm doing alright. I'm doing alright. You doing alright? I'm doing alright. 2 questions for you. One, what is your prediction for the job the Warrior of Light will be in 5.0? We've had Warrior, Dragoon, and now Monk/Samurai. It's usually been thematically appropriate, but since we're going the Garla mold, I can't think of what it might be. Machinist, one of the new jobs. And then also, after playing Spider-Man for a little bit, if you could get another superhero game that is as good as Spider-Man, what superhero would that be? That's a tough one. I mean, because Batman's my go-to, but we already have good Batman games, so... And I don't even want them to try another Superman game. I'm still of the... No, dude, that's tough. I don't know, man. It'd have to be... Dude, I don't think Iron Man can be fun. I don't think Thor can... Thor is like beat 'em. I guess technically any of them would work. Thor's beat 'em up fun. I don't know. That's a tough one. I'd almost need to be... I'd need to really sit down and think about that one for the superhero one, because Spider-Man's kind of just... He's fortunately a very fun-loving, go-lucky guy, which is why it makes me think Iron Man. But I don't know. Black Panther, actually, I think would be fantastic for a game. It's kind of similar to the way Spider-Man's... Their martial arts aren't the same, but just kind of like the idea of the hand-to-hand combat being the primary aspect. Captain America, maybe. I want people like that. I want people that are like have heightened physical ability, and maybe some verticality because of that, which is why Black Panther's a good one. He's very much mobile. He's very high-tech also, which is still pretty impressive. So I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with Black Panther. If I could get another superhero game that's as good as Spider-Man, I'd go with Black Panther. As for the first question, what job will he be? I don't know. I want to believe whatever new jobs we're getting, it'd be one of those. But he honestly could go back to Warrior. And I don't think it particularly matters in this one case what job the Warrior of Light actually is. But if it is something that is dependent on the new jobs, I think no matter what, it'll be whatever new jobs we actually end up getting. It'll be one of those if I had to wager a guess. What those are, we'll just have to wait and see. And finally, we have question number 12. Greetings, Mr. Hapster. Hello. I don't know why that's my go-to thing today. Hello. As you may or may not know, Lenovo from 11 has been announced for the next DLC character for Dissidia NT. Yes, I did know that. And interesting choice, I do think. I know there's been a bit of a controversy among the community. Okay, I'm going to be the one to say it because on Twitch, the mobile game that I play, Opera Omnia, has a bigger presence than NT does. So I don't know where that community is. I'm sure they're there. Sorry. I'm wondering if you could tell me your thoughts on the new edition. Personally, I think they could have done a better job of picking the character. Would have loved to see guys from 14. So here's the thing. 11 has had Shantoto as a representative for technically like a neutral character, sort of, on the Cosmos side. They've had her since the beginning. And 11 never got a villain. So the simple fact that they've never had a villain kind of already makes me think 11 deserves it a little bit more. 11 even got a second hero in Duodecim probably because they had no idea what villain they wanted to use. Like, what the hell villain do we use? Shadow Lord? That's a really weird one. Lenovo was actually my #1 guess for villains that they would use in Dissidia, and it's come to that. It has actually come to that. I think that it was a good choice. Lenovo's, a character that kind of fits into the dynamic that makes sense in Dissidia. He's already kind of like, he's one of those floaty characters. He's got a sword, he's got a shield, he's got a shtick. Being able to change the element on his blade, and then light blade being a special attack. He's got a thing going for him already, I think, is the best way. It's weird to hear him voiced. I will say that much, but I just think it's deserved. I don't know why 14 would deserve it. I guess you could argue that 14 is at the height of its popularity kind of now, as opposed to 11, which is, doing better than it was, I'd say, a year ago. But it's been on an incline, or on an increase for some time now. But it's, I think it's just a matter of veteranship for Dissidia's franchise. They just had an 11 representative for so long and never had a villain. And so I think it's about time that they got one. And I think Lenovo's one of the only good choices you can use from the villain side in 11. Let me just, again, rattle them off. Shadow Lord, you could probably work it in, but it'd be kind of weird because he's supposed to be one of those, like, super large characters. So you'd have to kind of, like, make him look more like Raugrim's actual size. You have Lenovo and his brother Ealdnark. I think his brother Ealdnark would have been a terrible option. I think he's just way too generic, like a lot of... He's to me, just another generic mage. Like, he has some shticks to him, but not nearly as much a shtick as Lenovo does. You have the Archangels, which you can't put one Archangel in the game. And if you're going to put Archangels, you might as well put one of the two brothers instead. You can't put Promethea in the game. That would be friggin' weird. You can maybe argue, I can't remember the guy's name. The other guy, the other Xylardian from COP, the guy who's with you the whole time. His name begins with an N. I just can't remember what it is. And then you have Treasures of Ottergon, which doesn't really have a humanoid. I mean, you could use Ralban from that, I suppose, who's kind of like, he's kind of like the villain for that section, Ralban. You can't use Alexander, I'll tell you that much. And then you have Wings of the Goddess, Lilith. It was kind of already past the game's height of popularity. Not a lot of people would know who that is compared to Lenovo. And there's not really any other good choices for that one either. Then you have Seekers, which, I mean, there are some options there, but again, I don't think any of them are very good, with Hades eventually being the option, but he's no. And then you have the Cloud of, and then the last boss, the other one's Cloud. I mean, I guess technically the Warrior of Light's, I guess, evil half, or the alternate timeline Warrior of Light from what's it called, Rhapsodies. It's another option. You have Abyssy villains. No, I just don't think any of the villains work other than Lenovo. I think he's the only one. Gaius, kind of just like another judge. I mean, I guess technically he'd be the best representative for 14, but he's just kind of like a judge, unless they do Shadow Hunter eventually. And if he's in any way different than his old form, then now we're talking about something, if that's the case. But if there is a representative from 14, I do think it will be Gaius one day. But Lenovo, solid choice for 11. I think solid choice overall. Anyway, that's the last question over on the forums. If you have questions for Mondays with Mr. Happy, be sure to ask them in the forum that is in the description of the video. We record those on Sundays. They go out on Mondays. Sometimes we live stream on Twitch. Haven't done it as much recently because Dragon Quest has been eating all of my live streaming time, like you wouldn't believe. But yeah, that's just where I stand. Anyway, thank you again for watching. I will see you next week for Mondays with Mr. Happy, and hopefully you'll be enjoying all of the 4.4 content we'll be putting out this week as well. Thank you for watching Mondays with Mr. Happy, and I'll see you next time. Until then, take care.